They ask, they have that one and they have a session one.
Is that over in Cafe Diem?
Oh, because we have no money. Where?
Well,
I don't like eating like fried.
let's do this for a while, and then we'll probably end early here.
I mean, no.
So let's see how it goes. Yeah. Okay. So obviously, we're moving towards the end of the semester. Yeah, I don't know what people are thinking though, because this is a once-a-week class, and so your absences count double. So
Who's here?
Yeah.
Favorite students.
because this is
I've had other classes that meet once a week, and one absence is just like one absence.
Really?
It doesn't count
No,
double,
it
yeah.
doesn't. But can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
Like for our
yeah.
journals this week? Can
Right.
we push those off to like the next week, Friday, that you get them on? Or,
what's the journals?
I mean, we're off now from work for the rest of the week.
Right.
We send it to you.
Yeah, I've been pretty flexible on when the journals come in, so that's okay.
Okay.
The way the journal things will work is that at the end of the semester, I will look at the set of journals, and I'll make an evaluation on whether they've improved, whether they're complete, and I'll give those points on that basis. So.
I have a question. Can
Yeah.
you just like reiterate this 6-page paper that we have to write with all
Right.
articles? Just
Right. So
Very specific.
as we've gone through the book, and there are other chapters in the book we're not doing, you may have found something you're interested in more than others.
But it doesn't have to be one that we went over.
Doesn't have to be one that we went over. It has to be one in the book. Yeah. So your challenge is find 2 articles, journal peer-reviewed articles.
Like off of like EBSCO.
Like EBSCO, right. So if you go to EBSCO and you click peer-reviewed full text,
Okay.
that's your simplest way to do it. And then you get 2 of those articles, you read them, and then you use them along with the book as a basis for writing up a paper about a theory or a theorist. So it could be about,
So if I was to do it about a
peers.
theorist, would I like kind of write not a bibliography, obviously, like I'm not writing, an autobiography, I'm not like writing like about him, am I?
Well, you're
Or am
writing,
I writing about his theory?
right, you're writing about, Bob Craig began his teaching career at Temple University, and then he went to Boulder, Colorado. He's focused on these issues throughout his career, and one of his main theories is the practical approach to communication.
And then for the 2 articles and 2 journals, so we need like 4 of the sources?
No, just 2.
Two of
Just
whichever.
asking for 2, right,
Okay.
yeah, just asking for 2.
And you said JSTOR, and what's the other one?
JSTOR and EBSCO,
All right.
yeah, are generally the best, your best EBSCO host, yeah.
You can't Google?
Yeah, you can Google, Google Scholar. Yeah, if you go on, in the Google menu with more things, there's something called Google Scholar, which is focused on searching academic sources.
And this is due on the last day of class, correct?
Yeah, this is due on the 11th.
On December 11th, that's not the last day of class.
Yes, it is.
It's the last day of class, but then there's the final.
Final is on the 14th.
Oh, so it's due December 11th?
It's due December 11th.
Within the paper, should we be referencing the articles? Should we?
Yeah, the articles should appear as a citation in the,
So we should cite the articles throughout the paper,
at least once, yes.
and should we be, like, if the article uses practical examples or situations, should we be drawing from those situations in?
Depends how you write the paper.
Okay.
So it really depends how you write. If you're writing the paper as a report on the research articles, then you could do it that way. You could draw out the example.
And the 2 articles will be on one theory?
Yeah, one theory or theorist.
Okay.
Right, Lisa?
If, let's say they mentioned something in the article that I'm unfamiliar with, I could obviously Google it to understand more about
Right.
it in order to, so then I could possibly use Google as one of my,
Just don't
If I
use it
have
as
to
a
cite
source. Don't cite it.
no?
No, don't cite Google. You should get used to not citing Google. You don't have to say you don't know what this is. You can just put it
Okay.
in there,
Okay.
as if you knew what it was.
So 2 theorists,
One.
No, one theorist,
Two
1
articles.
theorist, 2 articles.
5,
6 pages,
Okay.
6 pages.
double spaced, APA. That's the body of it, is 6 pages. So you're going to need another page, that's the reference
And
list.
discuss at least 2 theories that he made, the theorist created.
No, but discuss the 2 articles in it.
You want an abstract?
No,
Okay.
thank you. No, just looking for, a couple of goals here is just to get you writing, doing academic writing, get you doing APA, and get you doing citations too. So,
Is it like our journal entries that we're relating it to?
no, this is a
We're just straight up.
This is a reporting
and
paper,
just
right.
writing on it.
Right, this is not, I like this, I don't like this, no. This is just, this is just a reporting paper.
Just stating the correlations between the theory and the article.
Factual, content, information.
But we should maybe use examples, right? Like,
From the
or avoid applying examples to them at all. Or-
Well, hopefully the articles will give you a sense of how this has been used to do research.
Okay.
Yeah. This is different from your
journal.
journal articles, reflections. Yeah, that's where you're connecting it to things you see, things you're familiar with, things that happen to you. This paper is meant to be an academic report. Yeah.
So if you pick a theorist, like do like a brief biography, just like background information, then go into like his theories of what he's talking about or here or whatever.
Yes, what's important to this author.
Okay.
I mean, to some extent, theories, and for us at this point, theories and theorists are kind of tied pretty tight because you're looking at one theorist and one of their theories. People do have multiple theories that they do. They work in different areas. But yeah, for you at this point, it's pretty tight, close.
So who would you say is the most popular here?
Can you make a list?
Well, what do you want to do? See, that's the question.
I want to be able to write 6 pages.
Yeah, no.
Do a theory, we do a theory, right?
Yes, you could do either.
But you're obviously going to talk about, if you talk about a theorist, you're
The
going to talk
theorist.
about
Right.
what theory he
It'll
made.
cross over.
Right, first.
But it depends what, I would like to see you use something that's of some kind of interest to you. If you're interested in public relations, you can look at some of the media theories that we're doing or some of the public knowledge ones that we did, persuasion ones that we did. If you're interested in small groups, there are some other small group theories in here. If you want to be an organizational consultant someday, there's organizational theories. So I'd like you to do something that's meaningful for your program.
Rhetoric theory?
Yeah.
That was like Aristotle. Is there scholarly stuff?
Right. Yeah, there is plenty of scholarly rhetorical literature today. Yeah, it's you'll often find it in the Quarterly Journal of Speech is a good source to look at. And it'd be simple enough for you if you're going to do rhetoric to say, where is rhetorical theory used today? And I did research on this and I found these 2 articles, so I'm going to talk about these 2 articles and how they use rhetorical approaches. That'd be fine. Yeah, you should come out of here knowing something. Have you taken research methods yet?
Right now.
You're taking it now? Yeah. See, ideally,
We're not learning much though, trust me.
ideally, you would be moving from theory into research methods because research methods is supposed to be applying a theory to test the theory. But I guess it's not happening, but it could be, ideally.
No question.
So we're not necessarily dissecting the theory.
No, this is not necessarily a critical paper as much as it is an informational paper.
Information and application, or not necessarily?
You could do information application, or if you want to take a compare and contrast, you're welcome to do that.
Okay.
But do a compare, I'm going to compare just 2 theories about media, for instance. Yeah.
What did you say, informational and, you said another word?
Well, she said informational application.
No, before that.
Compare.
You could compare and contrast.
Dissecting.
information.
It's a report, an information
Sorry.
report.
It's a slow day.
This is like,
I'm sorry.
I don't know what this is
You know,
about.
we've been thinking about asking you what to do on the paper for about like, we're like.
I have email. I am
Syllabus.
I'm young enough to have email. I
But you
do.
know what? We're the ones who know, and all these rest of these people, man.
Well, they can watch it on the thing. All right. Let's do some stuff, and then I'll let you off early here today. But let me tell you this also. We may not meet December 11th.
So we can email the paper?
Yeah, you're going to email me the paper, right?
It's like park.
I have to be at a meeting in Michigan for distance learning on the 11th. It turns
So
out.
no class?
But I'm not sure yet. But it's likely I will not be here. Those groups that would be reporting then on the 11th will report at the final, and I'm going to shorten the final. I've already prepared the outline of the final shorter so that we can get into group reports for 45 minutes, then do the final.
Sounds fair.
So
So how will we?
I agree.
I'll send an email. I'm waiting for confirmation from Michigan about this meeting.
They're presenting on which days?
It's basically alphabetical order. The first 5 groups, in the list that I gave you, the first 5 groups report December 4th. The last 3 groups report.
Okay.
Last 3 groups report at the final. What's that?
Or the final, the 11th or the final?
11th or the final, whatever it turns out. Yeah, I have to get confirmation about this meeting. It's about distance education and promoting platforms and stuff like that. So.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it is. It will be. It's a national level too, so it's nice.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. We are doing today then media theories. We're talking about media. So I want you to try to think about this possibility. I want you to try to imagine a time when there were no mass media. It was longer than last week ago, right?
French books don't have mass media.
Well, I want you to think about, this is going to be very hard today. I can see this. All right.
We're eating turkey already.
What's going on here, Mike? Tell me, explain this to
Today's
me.
the day to lighten up.
I have a theory of student behavior or something. All right. I want you to try to imagine a world, living your whole life in a world where there is no mass media. So that means no radio, no cell phones, no television, no internet, no.
No, it's magazine?
What's that?
No,
No Us magazines, no mass media, anything like that. And we'll go before books. We'll do before printing as well. So what differences do mass media bring to the communication situation? So I want you to think about what it would be like to live in that world where you don't have any of those things. Now, you've seen stuff like this on movies, right? I mean, the films about medieval times or all these things where people ride from place to place on horseback and they read, declarations, and that's all you get. Now, I want you to think about how does that change your experience of life and experience of communication? What are you missing? What's better? What's worse in that world, Letitia?
It would actually affect the standpoint theory a lot because your world will be limited. You wouldn't really get to see what other people are like. You wouldn't get to hear other people's messages from different areas.
So there would be more local variety.
Yeah.
Okay, so there would be less what we call leveling. So we'll talk about leveling a little bit. Laura?
Like in times of war, I know that it would be difficult because you didn't know where people were.
Right.
You couldn't communicate fast enough or didn't know what was going on, and some people didn't even know where was at the door. And,
Right.
so I just prefer knowing about what's going on, I guess.
So there would be less coordination. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the sad stories that comes out of times like World War I and World War II, that when they signed a treaty,
Nobody would know.
people didn't know it for a while, so there was still fighting going on. So there were people killed in battles after the war was over, right? And so it's very sad that way if there was not good information transfer. All right, what else are you thinking changes before we have mass media, after we have mass media? Giovanni?
Be some details are exaggerated or left out. There's no standard of information.
Okay, so you're more subject to...
It's like what's important as it goes down the line of people telling each other.
Okay.
To get, misconstrued.
All right, so we've learned to call that the telephone effect, but it's another way to call that a serial transmission. As it moves from one person to the other, the message gets distorted more and more. So in serial transmission. Yeah, right, so in mass media, you have less intermediate steps. So the message gets out the same way to more people. Okay, so media has this effect. How about human relationships? How about your connections with other people? Are they richer, different? Do you need people for different reasons in that culture, in that time, than you do now? What would be different,
I
John?
think a lot of the actual happenings would be more inbred because you're closer
Okay.
with your own family and neighborhood.
All right, so life would be much more local.
Right.
So you would be depending on each other for information much more than in this context. I just read an article that was very interesting about over in Iraq with the soldiers, that a family, one of the soldiers asked the family to send some musical instruments, like guitars and cymbals and different musical instruments. And so the family did. They sent 1 or 2 guitars over to the soldiers. And it started to change things. More and more soldiers asked for musical instruments. And the way that it's shaping up is that they're saying before these instruments got into this platoon or this battalion, people would come back from their missions, plug into their iPods, and all go isolated. But what's happening now with these instruments is they're sitting around in groups of 4 or 5 instruments jamming, and there are 20 to 25 people gathered around them. So it's an interesting effect that they've moved away from iPods into a shared community. So to some extent, that reflects part of what we're talking here, the need for direct connections. All right, so let's introduce radio into the situation. So we introduce a new media form of communication. All right, what starts to happen as people have now a new form of communication, a new media of communication? How's that going to change the lives of people? What's it going to do to people?
They kind of hear more news as it's happening too.
Okay. So there's more information, more dispersed.
More current too, maybe.
Okay. It's more current. What happens to the networks of communication that existed before this? I mean, what were the networks of communication that existed before this?
Carrier pigeon.
All right, there were people who were the respected sources of information.
Journalists.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. I'm moving back.
Signals.
Newspapers.
Well, there were people, yeah, there were ways in which people were used to getting information, and those ways get left behind.
Right.
This was a conflict. When radio came along, for instance, they had cable companies. This is kind of interesting because this is replaying itself now between cable and wireless. But there was a long time that people communicated through cables and telegraph. And then Marconi came along and discovered that you could send information over radio waves, which would be wireless, no wire. And so as that developed, the cable companies were being threatened because wireless companies were forming to communicate information. Marconi made a contract with the British government about doing their communication for them, which meant the cable companies were going out. And so what they did was they formed a cable and wireless company to try to contain all of this. But it's interesting, you know, I know people now who don't have any landlines. I mean, I don't know if you guys have landlines or you just use cell.
We have both and we're paying too much.
Oh,
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know people who are getting ready to get rid of their landlines because they say, why do I need to have this landline? I'll just use my wireless. Yeah, a number of people don't today. And so when you introduce new media forms, you also introduce new ways that people relate, and you introduce new possibilities for human life.
Well, with the coming of the radio, it also created a little bit of isolation from the rest of the community.
Yes.
Because families were, well, first they had just the one radio, so families were crowding around
Right.
the radio just to listen to that. But then when everybody got individual radios, the families weren't together as much.
Right. And with the coming of transistor radios, personal radios, it really changes.
was it newspaper though before radio?
Yes, that would be true. Yeah, I'm thinking of electronic media is what I've got in my mind. I've got electronic media going here. So you get radio, and so it begins to reshape the way people relate. So what I'm trying to get at here is that communication theorists understand that whenever you introduce some new technology or some new media, it's not just a new way to get information across. It reshapes human behaviors and human community. So one way that this has been said, that's mine I think, one way that this has been said is that the medium is the message. That the medium itself carries with it some change and some statement about what human life is like and how we will live our lives. So the medium becomes a message in its own right.
In high school, I had this one friend, and her family was kind of messed up. Like, they had their own issues. But as soon as you walked in the house, it was always dead quiet, even though there was 3 boys, a girl, and the parents. That's because they were all on their own computer, and
Yeah.
they wanted to talk to each other. They just I am each other.
I am
they
each
never
other.
spoke to each other. It was the creepiest thing ever.
Really? Yeah. Yeah, so the medium brings a message that this is how you relate to other people. You don't sit face to face and talk. So all of this gets us into this question of media effects. What is it that media does to humans and does to communication? And so a lot of communication theory is built around this question of media effects. And there are whole departments of media studies: film, radio, television, and film. When I studied at Temple University, I studied in the radio, television, and film department. And they had a whole department devoted to understanding what happens when you introduce these mediums. How does it change behaviors? How does it change relationships? How does it change community? So when you started to get television, people wondered, what is this doing to people's opinions about things? So the question became, how is television affecting public opinion? Go ahead.
I think a prime example would be like now that the elections are going on, they always have those negative ads like, you know, Barack Obama, you know, is against whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Right. So,
Just trying to change it.
right, so let's take that for a minute. So a negative ad. The question that communication theorists struggled with was, how does this work? How does an ad or a news work in changing public opinion? How strong is the effect of media? Does media have a strong effect or a limited effect? That was some of the question. Go ahead, Andrew.
I think another example is those Michael Moore movies, like Fahrenheit 9/11. When everybody saw that, they were just,
Okay, so, and from a communication perspective, we want to understand how does media affect people's attitudes. So from a theory perspective, we ask, can we explain what's going on? You know, can we describe it? Can we explain it? Can we make sense out of it? And can we predict things from it?
I mean, you can change it in a positive way too with Inconvenient Truth, the Al Gore movie.
Okay, so you got Michael Moore movies, you got Al Gore movie, I think.
So now, hopefully that'll change people's way of living.
Right.
I think it also opens people's eyes, and whether you are opened positively or negatively, at least your eyes are open. Like, I don't know too many people that want to go into isolation and not hear about this, or that, or that, or that.
Well, here, let's pause for a minute. Now, a lot of the theories that we're talking about here were created in a time when broadcast television, you didn't have cable.
Right.
You had broadcast television. So you had about 12 channels, and 4 of them were worth watching, So you had the whole nation watching basically 4 channels. So at that time there was a big question about how much power do those channels have in shaping the views of people and shaping public opinion. There were studies done about it. And we'll talk about that. But part of now what we're seeing is with cable and with internet, you have the option to customize your media consumption. So you don't necessarily watch everything that is everyone else is watching. What you watched, there may be 8 or 12 different things that we watch to get our news.
Right.
There was a study, they did a study on this, about, they put 2 groups of people. They took one group of people and put them with news, television news broadcasts. And then they took another group of people for a couple of weeks. These people participated in this experiment. And they put them at computers to get their news off the computer. And what they found at the end of the time, when they tested people for their knowledge of public issues and different things, was that the television people had a broader understanding of what was going on, whereas the computer news people had chosen more focused what they were interested in. So they had narrowed their interest. They lost that broad understanding of what other people were concerned about. So that's an interesting question. The theory you read about, the agenda setting theory, was written in a time before there were the broadcast and the what we call narrowcasting channels going on. So you were much more limited in what was, I mean, you're more limited now. People limit themselves a great deal. So what do you think is the relationship between television news and public opinion? What are the options? What are the possibilities for the relationship?
I mean, how does it affect?
Right. How does this work?
Well, I mean, like even if, when there was a time there was only 4 channels, I mean, I hate when I watch the news and at the end of every story, the person telling the news story like throws in their 2 cents. Because it's like, that's not your job, you know? But I think by them throwing in their 2 cents, it kind of sways the story.
Yes. Well, that's called framing, right, when they do it. And there's a whole informalness now, at banter, everybody, instead of the just reporting,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, yeah. But, so you think that that has a influence on public opinion?
Or even other, yeah, I mean, or even like a news show that's kind of more like a news report, like Dateline, where they go in depth and like all this research. I mean, why is that any different from like a Michael Moore movie? They can portray it however they want, you know?
Right. So I watch this. Let's take it this way. I watch a Michael Moore movie.